Hello everyone. Okay, so yesterday we discussed about the setup, the development environment which we need to set up, and then we started with TypeScript. And the code for the same is actually checked in master. And in case you want to see the code which we have discussed on day one, it's like day one PR is available here. You can actually go through the file changes and you will be able to find everything which is changed. It was day one, so we discussed about few TypeScript thing, right? And that's what we are going to do today. So we discussed about number, string, boolean. We discussed about arrays and few methods which are available on arrays. And then we discussed about any. We started with enum. Yep, we did the enum as well. And then we started with tuple, and we saw a small program how you can actually swap two numbers using tuples. So let's go back to the code, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new branch. So you can actually refer the code for the day 2. So I'll say okay, this is, let's follow the same. So it's feature get TypeScript getting started. So I'll just use the same feature slash TypeScript getting started day 2. I'll just mark it as day 2. So yesterday we wrote this program. This is JS file. Sorry, this is TS. So we wrote this program to actually go ahead and swap two numbers using the enums in TypeScript. Sorry, not enums, tuples in TypeScript. And you might have also seen that. Okay, hey, thanks for following, Ankit. So you might have seen here one strange thing, right? This is something which looks like an array, and if I go just few lines above, and it looks like this array destructuring syntax. So you might be wondering, okay, what's the difference here? Because I can just do this using the array destructuring. So let's do one more thing. So what I can do is I can just do this rather than actually declaring something like this. I can just say, okay, this is let and new numbers. Let's create this as a variable equals to, I can say, okay, this is number which is type, sorry, not which is of type number, comma number, and then I can just use new numbers here. Hope there is no error. It is cannot redeclare. Okay, I'm redeclaring. So yep, let's see what we get. So it is not assignable to number target requires two elements. Or was it earlier what we had was the same? New numbers, and then we said, okay, this is type of numbers. Okay, let's use this. Probably I can so one advantage of using tuples, right? So you also, hey Ankit, hi. So you can also see we won't be able to, I think this is something why it is not working. Should, right? So let's see numbers, which is type of number, comma number, and then we are trying to use numbers here, which is a tuple, but it says swap number 1. Okay, it returns a number array. Okay, so what I can do is I can say it returns a number. Let's see, right? So yeah, so I have just changed my function. So I'm saying, okay, it returns the number, comma number, rather than actually this. And then you can see numbers is actually, there is no error. But let's see how it is different from an array. So if I try to actually use new numbers of 0, so this is a valid way to access any variable inside array as well. So again, you might be wondering what's new. So let's try to do this. Numbers of 0, numbers of 1, and numbers of 2. So you can see when I try to actually access a number by index of 2, it started giving me an error. It says, okay, tuple type number of length 2 has no element at index 2, which is totally different from arrays. In arrays, I can actually go ahead and read any and 100 the index, and if it doesn't exist, it will just throw an exception. So that's what we get using tuples. And with new syntax, it's also possible. I mean, this is something which came around 3 point or TypeScript 4, I think, I'm not sure which, but I can do this first number, this type of number. And so it is like you are also giving an label to your tuples. So this is possible using I think it is available in TypeScript 4. I'm not sure about the correct version, but yes, it's possible. So you can also give a label, so just to identify, okay, this is first number, second number. But while using it, you don't have to actually use your this labels. It's absolutely optional. So this is what you can do using tuple. There are few more use cases. I think once we move forward, we will discuss about that, because there is a way you can also, tuples can also give you an overloads. So that's an interesting use case. So it's also available. And let's move on. So tuples, and now we will discuss about we already discussed about any. So unknown is something which we will discuss in after functions. So let's go ahead and do that. First we will discuss about functions, and then we will talk about few more things, and then unknown, because I think that is something which we can take a pretty good example while working with function and classes. So let's go ahead and do that later. So let's see functions. I'm sure everyone knows about the different types of functions. In case you have used JavaScript, if you have not, just hang on, and we will see what are the different ways to write functions in TypeScript in just few minutes. So the first way you can write a function is using function keyword. So you can actually say function. Let's take an function called add to add two numbers, and then generally in JavaScript this is what we do. So we'll say, okay, number, or just use num1, num2, and then perform some operation, right? So I can say return num1 plus num2. But you can see we started getting an error. So implicit any, wow, so yesterday it was not working when we tried to actually change this. So just to let you know, in case you missed yesterday's session, so it's implicit any true, by using which we can actually make our TypeScript fail, or the code to return an error in case we are trying to use any anywhere. So I have just enabled that no implicit any, and it is already giving me error, but if I disable it, it will not give you any exception. So here I'm saying, okay, just go ahead and add two numbers, but okay, this is a similar function where does TypeScript fits in. So here you can actually these are called parameters, right? So this is the function name add, and then these are parameters. This is first parameter, second parameter, and I can have a number of parameters. So here I can also give the data type. So I can say, okay, num1 is type of number, num2, which is again type of number, so, and it returns a number. So I can also do that. So it's good to actually always give. So there are when I started TypeScript, so I never used to give or decorate a function with the return type. The reason being, I mean, Angular is smart enough to actually infer the values, but over the period of time I realized there is one problem. What in case I just miss this and I miss the return keyword, which happens, right? We are developers, we miss a lot of things. Your function will successfully run until unless you try to assign it to some other variable, of course. But here you can see it works absolutely fine, and it says, okay, this function returns void. So this is one place where it can fail, but always use the return type, right? So you can just say, okay, this function is going to return a number. So this is where your TypeScript comes into picture. It makes your functions type safe, right? So you cannot pass like something like this, right? So if I have to pass two numbers, I mean, I cannot do first string and then number. If I have this, if I don't, of course, let's see. So num2, num3, and let's go ahead and see. And you can see it because of just implicit any I am getting this error, but otherwise your function works perfectly. I mean, there is no error when I try to execute this function. So make sure that you are using the correct data type. In case you are creating a function, you are using a TypeScript and you are not using a function, I mean, absolutely you are missing something. I mean, you are not utilizing all the functionalities of TypeScript. So Sirkan, how are you? Okay, so so this is one way of creating a function, and then we can also create a function like this. So so this is named function, and then this is function declaration. This is generally what we call it. So let's say I can create a function called subtract is equals to, and then I can have two parameters. So I can say, okay, this is two parameters, num1, num2. Again, I will decorate the function with the correct types. So I'll say, okay, this is type of number, and then I can return here, right? So I can just say it returns a number, returns num1 plus num2, and this is also a valid syntax for function. And now I can just use subtract and then pass two numbers. So let's 10, 5, and it works. So this is another way. Third way, which is also used most of the time, which is like your arrow function, right? So you can use something like this. You can just say, okay, this is multiply function. So I can say num1, num2, and then you can just use so I don't have to use the return keyword here. I can just say num1 divide by, sorry, it's multiplication, right? So hey, it's okay. So I mean, doesn't matter, right? So most of the enterprises use Angular, so it's not compulsory that everyone should use Angular. And React is also a great framework, so it's everyone has their own choice, right? Okay, so this is your arrow function. This is your function expression. Express.js is great. I have seen a lot of people talking about it, but I have to give it a try. So named function. So this is okay. So these are three types of function, and then you can also, let's execute this. I don't think so it's undervalued. I mean, of course, still Angular is the preferred choice for most of the enterprises, large enterprises, where they want to ship faster and need a backing of a large organization. So this is where Angular perfectly fits in. And let's go ahead and run this now. So as we saw last time, so we can just run TSC, and what happened here? So TSC. Okay, so I have to be inside my TypeScript code, and then I can run TSC. So just to compile all the files, and then I have JS. So now you can see we have function.js as well. And the only difference you can see, right? I mean, the code which we wrote in TypeScript. Did I make any mistake? Okay, sorry. So thanks, Stefan. Okay, so here we have. So you can see, actually, if you see the JS code, right? So only difference is all the types are actually removed. So this is why we use TypeScript, right? So it's just to make sure the code you are writing is type safe, and then you can compile it down to the JavaScript code which doesn't contain any type safety. So now we can run TSC. We already did that. So now I can just run node, and my file name, as discussed yesterday, you can also go ahead and use TS node. So prefer one which you need. So you can see this is the output. So 1 plus 1 2, and then 10 comma 5, 10 minus 5 is 5, and 10 into 5 50. So this is this it? No, there are a few more things which we can do with functions. So let's go ahead and see that, which is related to these parameters, right? So here you can also make your optional parameters and required parameters. So let's see, let's say we have third parameter in number addition, but I want to make third parameter as optional. So how you can do that? So it's using ternary operator. So so this is called as ternary operator in JavaScript, and then you can use this and say, okay, it's type of number. So now this num3 is optional. If I don't pass it, my function will still execute. You can see this. But if I just remove this question mark, it means my function add requires 3 parameters. To make it optional, just add this ternary operator or question mark, whatever you want to call it, and that's it. So number 3 becomes optional. But how to use it? Of course, so you can just say, okay, if num3 exists, then I can just add num1 plus num2 plus num3, right? So, or I can just add 2 numbers. Again, I am using ternary operator here. So num2 for if else. So, and now I can just pass 2 parameters and my output will be different. And if I pass 3 parameters, let's go ahead and add 5 to it. So let's do tsc and node function. So you can see the first addition will have 1 plus 1 2, but second addition will have 1 plus 1 2 plus 5, which is 7. So this is how you can use your optional parameters, but make sure that optional parameter is always the last one. So you cannot use, you cannot do something like this. So you will start getting an error and it says, okay, required parameter cannot follow an optional parameter. So of course, anyways, you are safe, but don't spend a lot of time actually figuring it out why it is not working, because it anyways gives you an error, a readable error. Great. And you can also have a required parameter. So let's say if I want a default value for one of the parameters, so this is where you can actually go ahead and to use it. So I can just say num3 is equals to 2, right? So this is the default value which will be considered when we don't pass any value. So I can say num1 minus num2 minus num3. But if you pass any value, so the other advantage is if you pass any value, this value will be replaced. So I can say console.log 100, comma 5, comma 10, right? So it should come at how much? 85, right? So this is what should be the output. Let's do tsc and node. So 85, this is the answer which is coming from here, because we are passing num3 as 10, but here it will be 10 minus 5 minus 2, so 3. So because we made it as so this is required value, required parameter, and we already have a default value assigned here, so which is 2. Okay, let's move on. So these are 3 ways. You can choose which way you want to use inside which function type you want to use. There is a difference in this arrow function, right? So there is something related to this. I will not go into much detail. You can actually read about this on probably TypeScript documentation has hey Ramti, thanks for following. So TypeScript documentation has great explanation about this. Otherwise you can actually go ahead and read. There are a lot of blog posts which talks about this, so I will not go into much detail, but I'll just let you know, okay, these are the 3 types of function which you can use. You can also do something like this, I think. Yep, this is also possible. You can actually remove function from here, and that's also a valid function. So go ahead and choose one and use as you want. Great. So these are the functions, and then you can have required parameter and optional parameters. Now let's go ahead and talk about a little bit about classes. So remember when TypeScript came in, actually around 11 12, classes were actually not available inside JavaScript. Now it is supported thanks to ES6. So earlier, of course, TypeScript had to actually go ahead and compile the TypeScript and actually compile it down to the JavaScript syntax which was available at that time. So I'll show you both. I'll show you what was before. I mean, I can just change my TS config and I can show you the code. So let's go ahead and create a class .ts, and the way to write a class in JavaScript using A6 or TypeScript is same. So I can just use class keyword, and I'm sure in case you learned C or Java in your college days, you might have you already know about this class syntax. So I can just say class, and then I can give a name to this class. So let's say this class name is product, right? Now what your class can contain? So your class can contain multiple properties. Your class can contain constructor. Your class can contain multiple functions. So this is what your class can do. So let's add few properties to this class. So I can say ID. So it's like your product ID, and I can give it as a number. So you can see right now it is giving us an error. So it's a ID has no initializer, just because I'm using strict mode true. So if I make it false, I mean it will work, but as I said yesterday, try to work with strict mode as much as possible. That's always the best way to do. Then you can have a less number of errors. So I can say name, which is string, and I'm sure sir can be lucky with this because he is big fan of using strict modes. And then you can have price, which is type of number again, and then you can it's too small, looks like. No one said that. Is it visible? Just someone can confirm, or should I increase the font size? Let's see how many lines we can see. It's around 22. Okay, should be okay then. Okay, so we have ID, name, price, and then you can also have category for your products, which I will say okay, it's string. And then once we have properties, what else we can have is constructor. So if you are coming from .NET or Java background, so let me just clear this out. So you have constructor as same name as of your class name. It's not here. In JavaScript you have the same name as constructor. I mean constructor is a keyword, so you can just go ahead and use it. Again, there is a catch in constructor. Yeah, so here I can actually have a constructor with parameters and without parameters. So this is my default constructor. Even if I don't write it, I mean this will be the default constructor which will be called. But if I have to actually have a parameterized constructor, I cannot have both. So that's something which is not possible here in TypeScript. So I can say okay, this constructor has ID, let's say name, price. I mean the same values. We'll be actually getting these values from, let's say, whenever we initialize the class, right? So if I do this, so you will see an error. It will say okay, multiple constructor implementations are not allowed, and I can just remove one and it will work. So let's go ahead and assign this value. So I can say this. So this is another thing which you need to understand. So in case you want to call or refer to any variable, any functions within the same class, you have to use this dot, the parameter name. So here I can say okay, this is ID, which is equals to ID, this dot name, which is equals to name, this dot price, and you can see even the errors are gone, right? So you can see above all the squiggly lines which were available is now gone. So this dot category is equals to category. Okay, so we assigned all the values, and one more thing which I have to do is, of course, decorate this, because we have already added another check which is no implicit any here, so I cannot assign or create a variable or create a function without defining the type. I have to do that. I cannot just use implicit any. The reason being, of course, if I don't provide any type, TypeScript is going to consider it as any, which is this is what you can disable using implicit any. Number, category, string. Done. So what we did is we created properties. We used constructor with parameters, and we passed all the values here, and then we assigned all those values here. This is something which is required in case you are using the strict mode with in case you are using strict mode. And then I can also have function, as I said, right? So I can have, let's say, a function called get category, or let's say get product with price, right? So this is a function, and then I can just return this dot name, and here I can just use another syntax which I wanted to anyways cover. So this syntax, which is what we call it as string interpolation or something like that. So here I can just say return let me just tell you the older syntax, and probably then we can talk about the new syntax which we are supposed to use. So let's say I have to create a string from here which says return which returns this product costs this much, right? So let's say this dot product, which is this dot name, costs price, right? So this dot price. So this is what we used to do earlier, but there is a catch. So if I run this code, so let me just do that, and then we'll come back to the syntax, and then I'll also show you what was before. I mean, before ES6 came into picture, what was the class? I mean, how it used to downgrade all these code which is compatible with ES5. So I'll just create a new product. So I'll circle that mobile, or mobile phone. Is equals to new product, and then I can pass all the things which is required. So 1, comma, let's say 1 plus 9, and then I can pass price, which is, let's say, 50,000, and then I can pass a category which is mobile phones, and then let's do console.log, and here I can say let me just change this to camel case, mobile phone dot get product with price. Let's run DSC, and then we can just say node class. So you can see your string is right, 1 plus 9 costs 50,000. So it's like concatenated together. So the approach which we used to do earlier is something like this. So we need to actually give a spaces between costs, so it will not club the entire text. So what you can do in TypeScript, this is something which is also available with ES6 now. You can actually use another syntax, which is, I think, string interpolation, if I'm not wrong. You can just do this something like this. So you can use backtick operator. This is not a single quote, so this is backtick, which is available above your tab key. So you can use backtick, and then wherever you have placeholders are like your variables. So I can use dollar syntax, curly brackets, and your variable name inside this. So I can say this dot name, and then write your string. Your string will remain as it is. It won't be actually changed. And then you can say dollar curly brackets, and then you can say this dot price, and you don't have to actually go ahead and put any spaces in between. You don't have to do anything. This is something which you should prefer in case you want to create a concatenated string in ES6 or even in TypeScript. So let's go ahead and do this now. Vilas, hi, thanks for joining. So now you can see 1 plus 9 costs 50k, right? So this is something which I can do with this syntax, which is available in TypeScript and ES6 as well. Now let me just go back to class.ts. So class.js. So you can see the syntax which we have written in TypeScript is almost the same in JS. I think or not almost, but everything apart from that, apart from the thing that all the types are dropped, and you don't have any actually properties defined here. So this is something which is possible in ES6, and the same syntax is used. But what was before ES6, right? So we can just go ahead and change our target. So I will say, okay, this is ES5, and let's try to compile it now. And there is an error. I'm sure it should be okay because I dropped a function from here. So of course, if I can just keep this function, it will work. But if I drop it, I have to give an error function. So that's fine. But the important thing is we wanted to see class.js. So I'm sure you might have seen this code in ES5 in case you have written JavaScript code in older version. So this is something which we call it as immediately invoked function expression. So IFE. So this is how you can actually create classes in ES5. Of course, you don't have to do anymore because ES6 supports classes, right? So this is and this also generates, I think, more bundle size. That's also one thing which we have to keep in mind. And this will not, the latest one. So use ES 2015 and then compile it down. It will just use the same syntax which is available in ES6 or ES 2015. And now you can see you get class and product and everything is the same. So this is something which you can do with classes. And what else? So we got properties, we discussed about constructor, we discussed about the functions which you can write. So let's talk about few more things. Let's talk about okay, so here let's talk about access modifiers. I'm sure, wow, that's so I11 is going to be killed. So let's hope your client actually moves on and tries to adopt the latest browser. So here, so let's the thing is, but just to, I mean, the purpose of actually showing this is, I mean, you can still go ahead and write TypeScript and compile it down to the older version. You don't have to get stuck with the older syntax just because you have to support older browser. You can just write your TypeScript code, just change your tsconfig.json and target to ES5 and you are done. So you don't have to, remember, you don't have to write the older JavaScript anymore if you are writing TypeScript. Cool. So now let's talk about access modifiers. So I'm sure you might have learned or not, it's okay. So this is something which whenever we learn OOPS, right, so object-oriented programming, so you learn about access modifiers as well. And there are 3 levels of access modifiers which exist here. So you can have public, protected and private. So let's go ahead and use them and then we'll see. So first is, of course, let's use everything is by default private. So I can go ahead and use this properties in case I create a new class and extend this. I can access all the properties, all the methods inside my new class. And this is private by default. You don't have to actually mark it as private. So I mean, sorry, not private, but public, right? So you don't have to actually mark it as public to make it available. So it's by default public, as I think this is also same in .NET, C#. So let's talk about private first. So I can mark any properties and functions as private. So if I mark it as private, I think, this can be used inside the class, and this property can be will be accessible only inside the class. So if I do this private ID and number, now let's see how to pass or how to assign this value. One way is of course by using this constructor syntax. So I have this dot id equals to id, and it will work absolutely fine. But you can also use something known as getter and setters. You can also declare that in constructor arguments. You mean here we do that a lot. So we do this private when we use Angular services, right? So that's possible, yes, you can, but this is not what we want to see here. We want to actually talk about, let's see, getters and setters. So that's why I'm using this. So let's say if I don't have this, right, I mean I'm not taking this value as part of constructor here, and let's remove it. Of course I'm going to get an error here right now because of strict mode. So it says okay, id is declared, but its value is never used, and as well as you can see property id has no initializer and is not definitely assigned to the in the constructor. So if you are assigning it in constructor, you're safe, but you can also do this using getters and setters, right? So let's use getters and setters. So I can just use get id and then return. I don't have to do this, right? So if I am using getters, so this return this dot id property identifier. Okay, I think I have to, but sorry. So generally the way we do it is have it as underscore id and then return this dot. What's wrong here? id implicitly has return type. Expected. So I think, yep. So this dot underscore id, and while writing setters I can do set id which takes a parameter. So I can say okay, this is id of type number, and then this dot underscore id is equals to id, which is of course passed as a parameter, right? So this is something. No, Zolo, I'm not from JavaScript background. Sorry, I'm not from Java background. I used to write C#, but it's been 4 years now. I've been writing TypeScript or JavaScript code. Of course, I miss C# as well. But this getters and setters are available in TypeScript as well in case you want to use it. This is really useful in Angular as well. You will find it being used in most of the code bases which are available. So you can go ahead and do that as well. Now I can just go ahead and say let's remove this because I just have 3 parameter, and you can see it says okay, has no initializer and is not definitely assigned. So I can probably resolve this issue by actually providing 0 as a value and then rely on getter setters. But of course if you can do this inside constructor, that's also fine. So this dot underscore id is equals to 0, and then I can just remove this value from here, whatever you prefer. So you can do that. And now I can just say this mobile phone dot id is equals to 10, and let's go ahead and do console.log mobile phone. I mean I'm just printing the entire object, that's it. Okay, so it's compiled, and now let's run using node. And you can see the underscore id is having value of 10, which we assigned using your setters, and then the rest of values we passed inside this. So this is as it is, right? So there is no change in this. Good. And now let's go ahead and see what else we can do. C# is like Java 10. Still I like C# more than Java. Great, so this is class product, and let's move on and let's talk about protected, right? So using protect it, we can actually achieve one more level of encapsulation. This is what we can do. So protected properties at this, if you mark something as protected, they can be accessed within the class as well as the class which extends it. So let's try to create a new class. So I'll say, okay, this is class, so this is product, right? So I can say mobile is a product and it extends product, right? So if I can do so let's go step by step. So right now what we have done is we have a mobile class which extends product, and then I implemented the get product with price. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply price with 10. Okay, so let's see if I create a new instance of mobile class. Now let's create let Apple phones, right? Because they are 10x costly. Just kidding, I mean, I know they are costly, but so let's see. So here you can see if I'm extending mobile, it is also giving me option to actually pass all this constructor parameters, right? So of course when I extend this, I can do this. So I can pass, okay, mobile phone will be, let's say, Apple 11. I'm not sure if it exists, but and whatever price I pass, it will be multiplied by 10. So I'll say, okay, this is 10k, and then I can say category is mobile phones. And now I can call Apple phones dot get product with price, and now I'll be calling this function which is available inside here, and whatever price we have, it will be multiplied by 10, and then you can see the updated value. So this is how you can actually override any function. So in case you want to override this function in a class which actually extends this, you can create a same function name and then write your code, whatever code you want to, I mean the logic as per this particular class. So I can say, okay, this is console.log, and you can say Apple phones PC, and now I can just run node class 10, and you can see its mobile price is how much, multiplied by 10. So we passed 10k, okay, Apple 11 and price into 10, right? So it is 10,000. It's same, is it same? Yep, it is same. What happened here? So Apple phones get product with price, return this dot name, price is okay. I'm not calling this particular function, right? So I have to add a console here, sorry, console.log, and because of course price won't be changed. And now you can see, okay, it is multiplied by 10. It means here I'm actually calling this function, not the upper one. You can call the same function also by using super, if you want to, dot get product with price. This is also possible. So I can just say to return super dot get product with price. So I'll be calling the same function, I mean the same implementation which I have available here. So it's possible using super dot get product with price. And what else we can do? Constructor. So let's try to do a constructor here, and let's see what happens. So first thing is, of course, it will throw as an error. So if you have constructor from derived class, must contain a super call. So this is something which you have to do. Let's try to do this. So I'll say id. What are the parameters? Let's use the same parameter which we have here. So name, category, this, right? So remember, so whenever you are extending a base class in TypeScript, you have to actually go ahead and call super dot super with all the parameters which we have here, I mean which actually has the same signature as of your base class. So this is one requirement if you try to do it. I mean, yeah, this is it. Now uh, in case you want to actually call the constructor, otherwise it's by default it will anyways take the same parameter, right? So if I comment this out, you can see I still have the option to pass the values which we actually passed inside the base class, right? So or constructor parameters which we passed in the base class. So this is it, and now what we can do is, this is by default public, so I can use it. Let's try with protected if you ever need it. So I think protected is something which is available, which will be available inside the base class as well as the parent class. So I can just use here, I think all the you can see category ID name price, category ID name price, and this name, right? So this is you can see ID is not, underscore ID is not available here because we marked it as your private, but protected one will be available inside your base class as, sorry, derived class as well. I'm not sure if I have seen any use cases in Angular, but probably if you can come across, you can go ahead and use it. Okay, so these are few access modifiers. This is how you can use it. This is also how you can extend a class. So you have to use extends keyword in case you want to inherit a class. You cannot have multiple class, I mean you cannot extend multiple classes, so that's not allowed. So just take an example, class new product, and it extends mobile comma product. Let's see, class can only extend a single class, so this is something which is not allowed. So you can achieve the same using interfaces but not using classes. I mean, I think this is the same inside C# as well, and you can see, I mean, of course it's a Microsoft language and heavily inspired by C# looks like. So this is, I think this is more than enough information you need about classes to work in Angular. So I'll not go more deep. And in Angular, you never have to actually create an instance, so don't worry about it. This code is something which I have just shown you for demonstration purpose, and you can actually go ahead and use it inside a JavaScript code base in case you are writing a JavaScript code, I mean, which doesn't uses Angular, so you can actually go ahead and use it. Let's go ahead and so next thing which we will be talking about is interfaces. So let's go ahead and see that. So before we move ahead, interfaces does not exist in JavaScript. So whatever interface we write, actually it won't be visible once we actually compile our code. So let's go ahead and see, but it offers a lot of advantage, especially in type checking your code. So let's create an interface, and it uses an interface keyword. So I can just say interface, and as per Angular guidebook, so Angular says don't append I in your interfaces. So generally JavaScript developer and C# developer, including me, has habit of actually using I, which I have dropped over the years, but never use it, right? So don't use I as an to actually start or name your interfaces. So I can just say interface, the name of interface, right? So I can say, okay, this is a department, or let's take an example of address, right? So I can create an interface, and I can say, okay, this name of the interface is address. And why we use interfaces, of course the usage is same here. So you can actually go ahead and define some properties, and you can define your function definition but not the implementation. So but most of the time you will find interfaces being used inside Angular code base just for actually creating user defined data types. So in case I want to create a model, so let's take a real-time example. So create a model. So I have few properties which is coming from my backend. So I want to map it inside my application. So what I will be using is interfaces. It is true for, of course, all the languages wherever you want to use TypeScript. So in case you have an API call and you want to map it to your type safe data type inside your front end code base, what you can do is you can create an interface. Let it be React, let it be Vue, let it be any other framework which we have. So let's say address as address line 1, address line 1, which is string. And then we have address line 2, which is again string, and then you have city, which is string, pin, which is, let's say, number. I know for many countries pin is also string, so you can change it. So and then you have country, which is again a string. So let's say this is the user defined data type which we have. So we have an interface of type address, and now whenever I want to take address as a value, what I will be using is I will be using this address as a data type. So let's take few example, right? So far what we have done is whenever we used to create a variable, we have something like this. So let's say address. So let's say if you don't have TypeScript, we don't have interfaces. So what we will do is, of course, we can say, okay, this will be any, and then I can assign any values. But also this is also true. So I can actually do this something like this here. It should be comma. Is equals to. So you can see this is also true, but the problem is you have to actually go ahead and pass multiple properties here. You can just say address and then curly brackets and then pass all the properties here. So it will also work as it is. You can see it says, okay, address as address 1, address 2, city, pin, but you can actually remove this and just use, okay, I want to use as address as a type. Now why I'm getting a squiggly line here? So you can see it says, okay, the type curly bracket is missing the following properties, because if I'm defining this variable with this type interface, I have to pass all these properties. So all these properties are required. So once I do that, so let's say address 1, okay, I'm from Pune, so I'll just mention Pune. Then you have city, which is, let's say, country, no, city, Pune, right? So India, and then pin, it's a dummy pin, of course. And now you can see everything works, right? But there might be cases in interface that you want few properties to be optional. Is that possible? The answer is yes, of course you can do that. For example, let's say I don't want to take city or address line 2. Let's say I want to make address line 2 as optional. Use ternary operator, that's it. And now you can remove this and you will not get any error. But if I remove this, you will see, you will start getting an error. You will say, okay, address 2 is missing from this particular property. And now I can put it back, curly brackets, question mark, and then I can just skip it. So in case you have an interface where some properties are optional, make sure you use ternary operator to make or mark them as optional. What else? You can also have, let's say, let's create a new interface. I will say interface employees, which has few properties. So I'll say ID is one property, name is another property, name, string, and then department, which is another property, and then we have salary, which is, let's say, again number, email, and date of birth, which is type of date. So you can also use interfaces with arrays as well. For example, let's say let emp list is equals to, so I can say not equals to, but type employees array. So this is So yesterday we discussed about this syntax, right? So either we can create an array by using this syntax, or I can just say array of employees. This is also a valid syntax, so go ahead and use whichever you prefer. If you ask me which I use, so I generally use this, and then I can just say, okay, this is array of, and now I can define all the properties here. So I can say, okay, this is ID 1, email is test1 and the gmail.com, and date of birth. So to define date, you have to use new date, and then you have to pass a valid date time. So I'll say, okay, this is 11th March 2021, and then I can pass the rest of the department, which is IT, name, okay, salary, and that's it. So you have all the properties which are passed here. Just format this, and now I can just copy paste and make multiple records, right? Test 2, let's change this 1986 1980 1990 15 20. So this is our employee list array, and the purpose why I created this array is to actually show some example of array, the operators which we have available, and how we can use it with objects, right? So this, if you see this, I mean, in JavaScript these are objects, and let's do one thing. Let's compile this code, right? So let's do tsc, and now I can go to interface.js. So you can see it's actually an object. You don't have interfaces or any concept of interfaces available in ES6 or even ES5. So generally we just use it for type safety, that's it. So now this is your normal object, and now I can just go ahead and use some of the function. For example, let's say let's use filter function. So I'll say, okay, just find the salary, find all the employees where salary is greater than 10k. So how we can do that? Let find employees is equals to, so I can say this, we don't have to use this, but I can just directly use emp list dot, I can just say, okay, filter, and then I can say this is each emp, and on each emp go ahead and select emp dot salary where it is greater than 10,000. So this will return, so you can see the return type is actually an array of employees. So array of employees, so it will return array of employees, and then we will get all the employees where salary is greater than 10,000, right? And now we can just do a console.log. I mean, yesterday we saw a few examples, but using the primitive data types, for example, string number, find emp tsc, and now I can say node class, node interfaces, and we will have two records. Let's do table so it is visible, right? So I can say tsc and node interface. So you can see this is your output, which is available in tabular format. So we have two records, id 2 and 3, because first one is 10k, so we are looking for all the values above 10k, and this is your output. You can also do sum of all. Let's try to do that. So I'll say, okay, this is let's say we want salary for all employees, right? Let salary sum. So I can say, okay, this is emp list dot, first what I can do is I can just use map and just take the salary parameter. So I can say, okay, this emp and then it will just return the salaries of each employee. emp sorry, I'm just missing arrow here, emp dot salary. So now this code, what code this code will do is it will just return the salaries for each employee, and then I can just use reduce and pass the first salary and second salary. So I can say, okay, this is a comma b, and then say a plus b. So this is very useful in case you have, let's say, I think I discussed about same example yesterday, but we just discussed about it. So let's say if you have a product card, right, and you want to select or take the sum of entire product from your cart, you can actually run this method. So for each product you can run and then pass it to reduce and just select the total sum. But remember one thing, never ever do the never ever rely the calculation which you do on your front end, because this code your end user actually can see this code. He can also modify and probably break your application and book something for free. So always make sure that your backend code is actually secure enough, so no one can bypass all these things. TSC node interfaces, and you can see 45, right? So this is what will be the sum in case you do this. So 20 plus 15 35 plus 10 45, and we did it using a single line of code. So yep, great. So I think this is interfaces, and then we can also use interfaces inside classes. So let's take an example of interfaces inside your classes, how you can actually use it with your properties. What we can do is, let's take a little bit break and then we'll be back to discuss about interfaces, and we'll talk about ES modules. So this is two things which we'll discuss now, ES modules, and then using interfaces outside of this class, how we can do that. So yeah, let's come back in 5 minutes. Okay, we are back. So we were discussing about interfaces, and we took few scenarios, right? So we discussed about how you can create an interface, and then we took some examples of how you can apply some array operators like filter, map, reduce on your arrays. Now I'll take one more example. You can also extend interfaces, so that's possible. Let's do one thing. So here, right, so we have interface employees. I can also do extends, and then I can extend an interface. So we'll say, okay, I can say address, and now if I see the employees, so here properties, right? So if you see employees, it will also ask for all the properties which are available inside address. Of course, right now, just to avoid errors, I can just make everything optional, right? So here I can make everything optional, it will work. But in case you want to combine multiple interfaces, just go ahead and use extend, and you can extend multiple interfaces. So I can just say comma and another interface, and it will absolutely be fine, no issues. But there is a catch. I will just show you. I'll take one ID. I will say, okay, this is number, and so employee plus ID is 1, and then let's see what are the variables which we have. So you can see right now ID is actually something which is available in both, and if you see overlap, so ID is not available here, so I can just use ID at once. So in case you have common properties, you don't have to actually define it multiple times, or you don't have to pass it multiple times. It will be merged, and I can just change it in case I want, that address ID and ID is different. I can do that by giving a different value, and then I can just say, okay, this is address ID. But if both values represent the same, So you can just leave it as it is. I mean, it will be merged at while actually doing extend. So just keep that in mind. So I'll just keep it as ID just for an example, ID, and yeah. So this is extends interfaces. You can also create methods, as we already in case you're new to JavaScript or TypeScript. So you can also provide the function declaration. So I can say, okay, this is, let's say, interface, and I can say this is address util. I'd say utility class, let's say a utility interface, and then I can create a method. So let's say this there is a method called add, and it takes two parameters, num1, which is type of number, num2, which is again type of number, and it returns a number. So this is something which you can do using interfaces, and now I can just use it, extend this interface in any class, and then that class has to actually go ahead and implement add. So let's take that example, right? So what we will do is we will use this interfaces inside class.ts, and this is where we will learn about the concept of ES modules. Okay, so we wanted to discuss about ES modules, and this is the best I think example which we can take. So now let's say if I want to use this address util inside class.ts, how we can do it. So you have to actually go ahead and mark it as export keyword. So whatever you want to use outside of its class. So first let's try to understand what modules are. So in JavaScript or TypeScript, every class is a module. So this interface.ts is a module right now, and if you want to expose some API of this module outside of this particular module, so what you can do is you can mark it as export. You can have multiple interfaces, multiple classes, or multiple functions inside a single module or inside a single file, but when you go to Angular, it is suggested that you should have separate files for separate classes. Until unless you have to go ahead and use it, you can override some linting rules, but prefer creating a single class per file or single interface per file. It's not an hard rule, but try to follow some rules. Okay, so now what I have done is I have marked this one as export, and I can use it outside of this particular module. So where I want to use it is class.ts. How I can use it? So I have to use import curly brackets from the module from where I want to access this file. So it is always relative path which we use here. So here let's say /interfaces, because both the files are in same directory. So I'm using /interfaces, saying this file exists inside the same path as of yours, and inside curly brackets you can use control spacebar to see what can be used. So here I can use address util right now, and if I just remove this export keyword, I will start getting an exception because I don't export anything. So it will say, okay, this where is that? Yeah, error. So Angular address util is declared, but its value is never used, and then file is not a module. So this is important one, because it says, okay, it's not a module because we are not using export keyword inside for any of the function or interfaces which we have defined inside interfaces. So keep this in mind. Now I can just go ahead and undo this here, interfaces, and now here I can just use address util, and then as we said, we can extend address util. Sorry, it's an interface, right? So I have to implement. So I can just go ahead and say implements address util, and you can see there is an error. It says class product incorrectly implements interface. Let me see if my voice is audible. Yeah, so you can see there is an error. It says product incorrectly implements interface address util, because we have not implemented add as of now. So I can just click on this line and then implement interface address util, and this is the function add, which I can just go ahead and add or implement. So I can say return num1 plus num2. Done. So we have now implemented the address util. You can also export interfaces. So I can just say, okay, this export interface address, and then I can just give comma and say okay, take this address as well, and here I can define it as a property. So I can say there is another property called address, which is type of the address interface which we have, and that's it. So now it's saying okay, this is something which the same error undefined, and you should assign some value. Which we can probably do here. So I can say this dot address is equals to, and I think there is only one property which is required, so I can say okay, ID is 0, and you can see both the errors are gone, right? So this is how you can also use interfaces, and this is what ES modules are, right? And this syntax is valid even in Node.js, because I think Node.js 14 supports this syntax. So in case you are using Node.js 14, you don't have to use the require syntax anymore. So yeah, this is there are few more ways to actually use this, but try to use this syntax because you know what is being imported. The other syntax which we can use is something like this, which is an alias. So I can say okay, this import star as, so I can use star as syntax. I'll say okay, this is at attr from and dot slash interfaces. The only difference would be while using anything from interfaces, I have to say attr dot the interface, attr dot address. So if you're wondering, I mean, it will just take everything from this interfaces. It will not, I mean, it will just take whatever is required. This is something I think I'll just share you one. So this is the website ts.dev. I am sure this is the correct one. Yes. So ts.dev, you can go to ts style guide. This is actually created by my friend Alex Apruchko, so who has been managing it, and you can actually go ahead and refer this style guide here. And this syntax which we have seen here is actually absolutely good to go and good to use in case you are using it for interfaces, but prefer this one because you have clear visibility what you are going to import rather than using this one. It doesn't impact your bundle size as such, so you can refer ts.dev from Alex and to read more about the TS style guide, right? So just wanted to show you, and he has been sharing some cool tips as well, so you can just go ahead and follow him on Twitter, and whenever he tweets about it, you will be able to know. So we have interfaces, we discuss about modules, ES modules, and now let's talk about union and intersection type, and then we'll talk a little bit about generics, or let's talk about generics first and then we'll talk about union and intersection. Yeah. So generics is something which exists in, of course, most of the languages. So we can of course go ahead and use generics here as well in TypeScript because of course heavily inspired by C#. So it exists. So generics is where actually you can provide some kind of placeholder. So let's say you don't have any values defined, right? I mean, you want to add, you want to provide the implementation for add function, but your add function can add two numbers, two string, but you don't want to write it multiple times. So what you can do is you can actually go ahead and use in generics, where you can define okay, this placeholders will be replaced by the actual data type which will be passed while actually calling this method by the developers. So let's see some example here, right? So we have function, so let's see how you can use it with function. So I'll just use function addition because we already have add, and then I can say t and num1 which is type of t, and num2 which is type of t, and it returns a t. So sorry, comma, right? So you can see it says okay, now what we have, function implementation is missing or not immediately. So here I can say okay, this is the function which is addition, and it takes two parameter. You can find some example. Lot of developers use it as type, t for type. This is what it is. So you can actually use t or type. Me being actually I'm coming from C# background, so I have used t at most of the time. So and now it says okay, a function whose declared type is neither void or nor any must return a value. So we are not returning any value from here as of now. So let's see, and I'll just return t. I'm not doing any operation here right now, but let's see, right? So I'm just returning t. T only refers to type. Okay, and I cannot return t, but let's do num1 plus num2, and we will still get an error because, so it says function add plus cannot be applied to types t and t, because I'm creating a function, but the types are still unknown, right? So what we can do is to avoid this value, I can just say okay, it extends a number, so okay, and then return, what is this, a number is not assignable type t, and then I can say if just a second, I can right now, let's do something like this. So I'll just use this function as a type. Let's probably do that. Type addition is, and it returns a t type. This is a valid syntax or not? No, this is not. Equals to, and let's try to have let add, which is type of addition, and then we will pass addition of type number is equals to add num1, no, add number, which is type of addition of type number, and then I can do add number and then pass two variables, two properties here, or two parameters here, 5, 5, and unassigned. Okay, and just this is a type, right? So I just wanted to show you how it can infer the type. This is what I wanted to show you. So here you can see addition, it is defined as a type, but I can use it on function, I can use it inside a class. So here I have an addition, and then I'm saying num1 of type t, num2 of type t, and then you can see here, so if I said addition of type number and I do add number, you will be able to see I can pass number, num1 of type number and num2 of type number, and it returns the number. So this is how your generics work. You can actually go ahead and replace the actual value at while using or using this particular function or class or any interfaces, right? So it's, you can do generics with your functions, your classes, your interfaces. Let's see an example which you might have seen inside C#. So let's go ahead and do that here, class.ts, right? So I can create a class, I will call it as a base class, and I don't know the type, so I want to keep it t, and then I have some property, so I'll say okay, this is data, which is t array. So let's say I'm taking array of values, but I don't know what kind of value it will be, so I'll say okay, this is t array, and then I can just write some functions and my constructor and everything, and I can use this as a base class. So I can say okay, this is a class, let's say products. Products is already there, so I'll say okay, this is department class, and then I can say okay, this is extends base class, but here I have to provide the actual value. So I can say I do have interface called address, so I can say okay, this is address, and then data will be, you can see it will be if I don't assign anything. So let's see, it has implicitly any type, but here data address array. Let's see. Okay, so you can see I can now at the implementation time I can type, at the implementation time I can provide, okay, what kind of data, what t will be. So here I'm saying it's an address, and then I can say, okay, data is address array. So this is what you can do using generics, and then I can just go ahead and use, probably I can use inside constructor and do I don't have any assigned, I don't have any values assigned right now, but I can take this data and do whatever you want to, right? So it's like you have a base class and you have a common property called data, which will be available whenever someone extends this class, and you still get the type safety. So you can see, okay, data will be t of array. So let's see what this error is. Data has no, okay, it's absolutely fine. So I can just go ahead and do constructor, but I don't have any type defined, so probably will fail. But data is equals to, I'm not sure, it should work. Okay, it works. So you can avoid this, and now at the implementation time, pass whatever value you want to. If I try to do something else, let's do this array. So let's see what happens here. Data has no initializer and not definitely assigned. Let's see, this dot data is equals to empty, and it works. Okay, super must be called before. Okay, absolutely fine. So this data will be type of address array. So, but it's not giving me anything here. Let's try to create a instance. Let dpt list is equals to new department, and now dpt list dot data. So let's see the type here. So it says it's an array, but it should be data of address array. I'm not sure why it is working, but it should be address array, and now you can see it's an address array, but it works without this as well, so which is strange. So this is one example, and I'm not sure if it is clear, but you can actually go ahead and use it with base classes. Provide the data type here as t, and you can actually replace it with whatever data type you want at the implementation time. Same goes to function. So as we saw in function also, you can do the same. You can say, okay, this function will be type of, so while creating a function. I think that was then perfect example, but let's try to write it again. Probably I missed something from the earlier example. So I can say addition, where we don't know the type yet. So I can say, okay, this is t, and then I can have number 1, which is t, number 2, which is t, and then it can return t. So this is an example of using your generics. Now I can replace this t with whatever value I want, right? So I can replace it with probably string, number, or in case I want to add two arrays, so I can actually concat two arrays using the same function. So this is this example. Interfaces, of course, you can also use interfaces with generics. So I can just say, okay, this is t, and now I can use this data as type t, and whoever actually extends this interface, or before actually assigning the value, you can actually say, okay, this will be address of type I can say, okay, this is number, right? So I can say, okay, this is number right now, which I'm passing here, and then data can be number. So I can say, okay, this is 10. Similarly, if I am extending it again here, right? So you can say, okay, this is extends address of type, I can say, okay, this is string, and here I am missing data, right? So I can say, okay, this is data, which is some string value. So right now I'm saying an empty value, and here also. So you can see the data type of this data is string, because we are using generics. We have not defined the values as hey Krishna. It's okay. I mean, it will be available for 14 days, so you can actually refer it any time. And this is just a simple example. Of course, in real world use cases, you will have some complex use cases to use generics. Yeah, we are still at TypeScript. Okay, so the next thing which we can discuss about is union and intersection types. So union and intersection types are generally used to narrow down your input values which you can take. So let's take an example of a small first union data type, right? So I can just go back to data types. So far, the data types which we have seen, string number, we saw Boolean arrays, and then we also saw tuples. We can also use the union data types. For example, let's say I want to create a variable, but I just want to narrow down the input type. I mean, it's not like I want to accept string, any data type, but I want to actually just accept string or string array, which is possible, right? So let's say I use names as a property which will be string, but I can also accept string array. Happens, right? Sometimes you have requirement, so you can actually do something like this. You can use this pipe operator, and then you can say string or string array. So this names property can only accept two types of values, either string or string array. If I try to provide anything else, so I can say names is equals to, let's say I try to provide a numeric value, so it will fail because I have just used this union type, right? So union type, that your value can be either this or this. Remember, in union it can be string or string array, it cannot be both, of course. So here I can say, okay, this is let's say if I assign string of array, it will work. Or if I assign a string, it will work. You can also use union types with interfaces as well. So let's say here I'll go back to interfaces, and then I want to create a variable, or I want to create a variable which can have either address, or I think we created another department, if I'm not wrong. No. Okay, so let's say we have employees interface, and then we have another department interface. So I want to create a variable which can have either employee or department. That's also possible. So I can do that using, so let's do interface department, and then department will have some properties, ID which is number, department name which is string, and then you have department name. Okay, that's more than enough, right? So we just want to anyway see the demo. So I can say let and a new variable. So I can say, okay, this is test union, right, equals to, which is type of employee or department. So now if I try to assign some value, so I either I can assign employee, so you can see it says employee or department. So I can either assign the values which is type of employees or department. So you already have something for employees, right? So here employee employee, this is employees array. So let's use this one. So I'll just move it down here, and then employees, this EMP list, right? So I can say, okay, this is employees array or department. So if I assign this EMP list as a value to this test union, it will work. I mean, of course, we are expecting employees or department, but if I try to assign some random value, it will fail because it will say, okay, this type number is not assignable to type department or employees arrays. In Angular, this union types are used at a lot of places. So generally you will find it being used, for example, guards, type guards, right? So we'll see an example of type guards, not type guards, route guards in Angular, where actually the union types are used. So you can narrow down your inputs by using unions, and the other way is using intersection types. So let's take an example of intersection. So here, right, I want to actually create, let's say we already have employees interface, and I want to add one more property to this interface. What are the ways? Of course, the first way everyone will think is, of course, I can go ahead and create an interface, right, and then extend that interface, and that my job is done, right? But there is a smarter way to do this. So let's say I want to add one property while I'm writing some code, and at one point of time I require one extra property into the employees interface. So this is what you can do. You can actually go ahead and create a type, and then say employee intersection, which is equals to, so I can say employee and and I can add a new property. So name is already there, but let's see what else we have. Employees, name, department, salary, email, date of birth, and date of joining. So let's say I want date of joining to be added into this array, so I can just go ahead and say this date is added. Now if I see this emp intersection and try to assign a value, so you will see is this only refers to it, but is used okay, sorry, it's a type, so I have to create a new variable. Let emp type is this emp intersection, and then I can assign the value. So you can see you have data, department, date of birth, date of joining, which is part of now your all the property list. So you don't have to go ahead and modify your existing interface. You can just use intersection, and then go ahead and use go ahead and use all the existing properties plus extra which you wanted to. You can also use intersection with interfaces as well. So here I can also do something like this. I can say employees intersection and a department. So if you see this here, now you will have all the properties of employees, all the properties of department, unique properties, and overlapping properties will be removed. So you will not find it multiple times. For example, I'm sure there might be ID, right? So ID is actually part of both the interfaces, but you will find in final interface you just have ID only once, and all the duplicate properties which we had, which is removed, and only all the unique properties will remain here. So if I have name also, I think let's say if I have name, as name is already there, so employees and department both contain name, so you will find the name being used only once here. So you can see data, and department is string, and name, right? So name is only once, so you can see this is property name, which is kind of string, property ID, which is kind of number. So all the important thing to notice here, so you can see the properties and the type here. So if the property is referred from some of the interfaces, it will say employees.email, but as ID and number both exist in both the interfaces, you cannot see any department dot or employee dot here. So it's actually it's a way to figure out, okay, from where we are referring this, right? So it's like right now this property exists in both, and they are clubbed together. So, and if I go to salary, it will be employee.salary again. So this is way to use intersection, and let's go ahead and see what else we have. So generics, interfaces, union, and intersection. I think okay, let's talk about literal types, and then we can probably move on. So literal types in Typescript is something like this. So for example, if you want to create a variable and you want to have limited values, right? So this is something which you can also do using enums, but let me just show you the example. So I can say let, so for example, status, right? So I want that status can be only 3 values, for example. So it can be in progress, closed, and open, right? So what you can do here, so of course one way is actually to use enums, so I can just select one while giving the inputs, but you can also do something like this. And right, so I'll say cannot reduce, cannot redeclare, so status is already available. I'll say okay, this is task status, and in progress open and closed. Okay, so using literal types now, what you can do is, in case you want to assign any status, right? For example, this is new task, which will be type of task status. So if I see the values, you can actually assign only 3: closed, in progress, or open. So I think I made it a typo, but this is something which is possible using literal types. And you can also create new types. I think there was an example which we saw here. So interfaces dot, where is that gone? Interfaces dot ts, right? So you can also create your own types using type keyword. So you can say type and whatever type you want to create. And the only difference is, remember this, you don't have colon, you have equals to here. So I can also create this as a type. So I can say, okay, this is type task status is equals to in progress, open and close. So this will become a type. Now I can use this type anywhere I want. I mean, here it's just an example. So I can say, okay, this is let new task is equals to, which is task status, equals to open. So this is something you can, let's say you want to create some globals, right? So you can create it as a type, then export it and use it anywhere you want to. So keep this in mind. Also you can do with union. So I can say type names is equals to string or string array, right? And now I can just use it as a type. So I can create let new names which is type of names, and then equals to value. So this is something which is possible in TypeScript. So you can create your own types by using type keyword. And there are pretty so related to type, right? So there are pretty advanced use cases which are available, but I'm not going to go into more detail, more advanced TypeScript stuff. That is something which you can learn about when you are using it. It's a getting started, right? So I will keep it to basics. Probably we are going to actually have episode on Tech Talks with Santosh. It will be around, let me just let you know the dates. It's April, May, June. So around, I think June 4th, there will be an episode on Tech Talks with Santosh where we are going to talk about advanced TypeScript stuff with one of the open source contributor, open source developer. So his name is Anurag. So we'll talk about the advanced stuff. So feel free to join in case you want to. And apart from this, let me see if I can just do Sure. I will. We will discuss about generics in more detail. So feel free to join. I think it's around. I mean, it's still, there is still a lot of time, but you can actually go ahead and join that talk. Or there are pretty good examples inside NGRX codebase. You can actually find a lot of. It will be Krishna. So it will be, but it's on 4th of June. It will be at 10 p.m. IST. So if you want to join. So NGRX code also contains a lot of good examples of using generics. And is there any other code bases? Yeah, I think NGRX is one. So where you can go ahead and refer some examples. This code is available on GitHub, so you can just go back to and Santosh Yadav dev, and yeah, this is the correct one. You can actually keep it as a reference. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about TypeScript configuration, because we have few minutes left. So here, right? So we already discussed about this target, so I can go ahead and change what kind of what version of JavaScript I need once I compile it, once I compile my TypeScript. Then you have modules. So remember, there are multiple types of modules. So earlier we had CommonJS. CommonJS is something which we specify that it is written for your server-side programming. The problem with CommonJS is it's not tree shakeable. So Angular suggests you to use ES Next. So if you go to Angular codebase, you will find ES Next here. Then you have let's see few more properties out. So in case you are using JavaScript in TypeScript in a JavaScript code base, you can also define out directory. So right now, if you see, all the files are actually compiled here. So you have class.js, datatypes.js, function.js. So it becomes really difficult, right, to figure out where your outputs are. So you can actually go ahead and do something like I'll say, okay, all the JS files goes into distributable folder, so /tst. And once you do a TSC, there will be a new folder which will be created called dist, and then all the JS files will be created here. So you can use outdir for that. No emit on error. So strict we have already seen. Try to use strict mode as much as possible. No implicit any. Go ahead and enable it to true in case you are starting a new project. So no one can assign any implicit value or implicit in any value. So once you do enable strict mode true, all these strict parameters are actually enabled by default. Then additional checks: no unused locals, no unused parameters, no implicit returns. No implicit returns in case you want to actually avoid some examples, right? So here, right? So if I don't want to actually have this scenario where I don't have the return type available here, you can just enable no implicit returns as well. Then what else we have? Enable yes module interop. So this is to actually make sure that your code works between CommonJS and ES modules. So this is ES module interop, it is required. And these two parameters. So decorators, I think I have missed talking about decorators. Probably we can do it in next week, next Saturday. So decorators is something which I have not covered. So we can talk a little bit about decorators. And decorators are widely used inside Angular. That's the one reason I want to actually go ahead and cover that as well. These two flags are required in case we are going to use decorators. Initially, actually decorators were proposed as a feature of JavaScript or ES6, but it's not available anymore. And so whatever implementation TypeScript did is something which actually remains in TypeScript only. So that's one of the reason that Angular team says don't try to write your own decorator as well. So this two flags needs to be enabled in case we are using decorators in TypeScript. And I think this is enough, but yeah, there is one more, source map. So in case you want to debug your TypeScript code, right? So right now what we are getting is the output is JS file, and your browsers can only understand JS, they cannot understand TS. But in case you want to debug your JavaScript files, TypeScript files, so what you can do is you can enable source map. So let's do that. So I'll enable source map and then I will run TSC. So it will create a js.map file. So let's see what this js.map file contains. So here it will be it has a sources property which actually tells the browser that this file is actually created from this particular source class.ts. So you can actually go ahead and add a breakpoint inside your browser in this particular class.ts file. So in case you have already used Angular, this is the reason you are able to actually debug your TS file, because in dev mode actually source map is enabled as true. So there is a map file which is available which tells your browser that okay, if I am trying to debug a class.js, it is actually coming from class.ts file. So go ahead and allow me to actually add a breakpoint there as well. So this is a source map property, and remember, you don't have to actually play with all these flags most of the time inside Angular. They are properly enabled, so you don't have to do that. And let me just add this star slash dst. So I'm just adding this dst folder in git ignore, so because I don't want to check in it as well. So I think this is it for the day. I'll try to cover these decorators next week, and if I can find some use cases of generics, I mean the good use cases of generics, I'll try to cover that as well. Otherwise we will start with Angular, so we'll do the setup and then we'll learn about template syntax. And in case you want to actually help me or you can actually talk about this live stream with your friends. You can actually share it with your connection. That will be the greatest help I can take, because anyways I'm doing it for free, and that's if you want to, actually you can go ahead and do that, but that's optional, right? So I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, so you can find my all channels on santoshadav.dev, and you can tag me in case you are tweeting about it, so I know how many people are actually coming or getting advantage from this particular course, and feel free to share it with your friends as well. So that's it for the day, and as I said, this will be available on YouTube next week, so I have to actually go ahead and upload it on YouTube as well. Probably I'll do it on by next week. So going onwards, it will be only available for 14 days. That's the policy of Twitch. So for 14 days you can find it on Twitch, but after 14 days you will be able to get the same thing, same recordings available on the YouTube channel. So that's it for the day. So see you next week, and in case you have any questions, feel free to actually ping me on Twitter or LinkedIn, wherever you are connected with me, and I would love to answer your questions. Bye everyone, and see you next week. Bye bye.